Welcome. How are you? Did you enjoy the movie? Isn't it great? It's a very curious movie. I can't wait to talk about it. My name is Stacey Wilson-Hunt. I work here in Hollywood for New York Magazine and Vulture as the Hollywood editor. And I'm very honored to be here tonight to speak about Love After Love with two of its stars. So I will bring them to the stage now. Please welcome Andie MacDowell. And Chris O'Dowd. I just love that you're in a movie together. It's not a pairing we would have expected in life. I love it. It's so great. So before we talk about the movie, I always like to ask people about their early days as actors, and I would love to know what each of you considers your big break as an actor, as a performer.
I did a Mike Leigh movie called Vera Drake, which was kind of an abortion comedy.
I don't remember the comedy part.
That was just me, I believe. And that felt very much like it was the first time that I could stop my day job for a while, which was very exciting. I guess I was around 25. And then you think that every movie that you do or every piece of work you do is going to be made by this auteur genius. And it turns
you
out
got very spoiled.
Yeah, that was a blessing and a curse.
And how did you initially get into acting? Did you audition a lot? Did you study it in school?
Yeah, I went to drama school in London, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and then auditioned and did 200 plays and all of that. And then started getting little bits and then got that first film and things really became a lot easier.
And Andie, you had an interesting entree to the business.
Yes, I did. But, for your first question, what was my big break? I would say Sex, Lies, and Videotape, because up until that point, yes, thank you. Yeah, it had been a struggle for me. I had not had an easy start. I probably had the worst start of any other actor in the world.
In what way?
Well, my first movie I did was Greystoke, and I was dubbed by Glenn Close. So coming out of that was really hard. It was not an easy accomplishment.
Did you feel very discouraged?
Yeah, I was devastated and humiliated and crushed, and I just got into class. I had no foundation. I didn't have any formal training. I did study theater in college, but it was not the foundation that I needed in order to do something like that kind of undertaking. I was not prepared for that. And I had to go. I worked really hard. I got into class, and I still had a lot of doubts about myself. Even when I did St. Elmo's Fire, I was still afraid of myself. I was very shy. You can see it on film. I come across as very shy. And
did you find yourself getting cast in parts
I couldn't get cast.
Okay.
Not only could I not get cast, I couldn't get auditions. I couldn't even get in a room. But what I started doing was, if I got an audition, there was a coach that I had found, Harold Guskin, who was very well known and worked with all the big heavyweights. I think he worked with Glenn Close. But anyway,
he heard too well is the problem.
He worked with all the big guys. And so for all my auditions, I would work with a coach, and I would go in and I'd change people's minds. They would be surprised, and they would tell me they were surprised. And I just kept doing that until I had a couple of the jobs. And then Sex, Lies, and Videotape, I knew that woman so well. And I was so fired up when I read it. I was like, man, I could kill this. I got to get this job. And in preparation, I even took it and put it up on stage in my class where I was working. I worked it hard. Wow. And
so it's like 30 years ago right now you were making it.
Correct. That was 30 years ago, and then it's like a paradigm. It was like I was seen as like really damaged, unusable, and that changed everybody's perspective, because critically it did real, and here's the big thing and I'm telling you, in this business, it made money. And that's the ticket. That's where you change.
So you were seen as
everybody's
bankable
mind.
after that. You were seen as someone who could actually make money from a movie.
Critically, and more importantly,
Right.
you made money. That's a big deal.
They seem to like that.
Yeah.
They like that. They like that.
The more, the better, unfortunately. So what appealed to you specifically about this movie? When you first read the script, it's an odd script, I imagine, as the movie itself is odd and very unique in tone and structure and in style. When you first read the script, what did you think, and why did you think that you would be right for this part? Start with you, Chris.
Interestingly, the first thing that introduced me to the material wasn't the script. It was a short film that they'd made, a lot of the same people, and particularly Russell, called Rolling on the Floor Laughing, which was essentially the same characters of sorts, like two brothers and a mother who had gone back into the dating pool. And it was so awkward to watch. They managed to do it in this kind of 8-minute period or whatever it was. They managed to create so much atmosphere, which is something that's such a rare commodity in film, that I was like, oh, this guy's got a great eye, or a great sense of how to make conversations very difficult.
And feel very real, too.
Yes, and
Right.
feel very real. For that reason, I think. And then I read the script, and I thought it was really, really strong. So that was... and then met Russell, and he was essentially a first-timer, so it was... it was definitely a process to decide, are we going to get into the trenches together?
Were you nervous at all about how the fact he hadn't directed a feature before?
A little, but also kind of excited. There's always... It wasn't my first time working with a first-timer, and there's great things that you get that you just don't get from people who are more experienced, and they're excited by the process so much because the novelty of it hasn't
They're not
killed
jaded
them.
yet.
Yeah. So creatively, it was very enticing and turned out to be very fruitful because he was such a wonderful creative person to be around.
And Andie, did you feel about Suzanne the same way you felt about your Sex, Lies, and Videotape character? Did you feel like you knew this person, or was this a stranger to you that you had to sort of invent and discover?
No, I felt like I knew this person, and it's also, at my age, it's so hard to find characters that are this well-developed and multi-layered, and it's interesting. You don't really find... you can't. I haven't read anything like this. And plus, I was very fortunate that Chris wanted to work with me, because I'm sure he was on board. He probably could have said, no, I don't want that woman.
Did you have that kind of power, Chris?
Nope.
Okay. Oh, but you did want me, didn't
I
you?
did. Oh, yeah.
Power to say no, I mean.
I was very excited about the
Did you know
prospect
each
of
other
that.
before? Had you
No.
met? Okay.
No, but I had always admired her work, and thought that there was a performance like this kicking around as well. So was excited when she came on board.
Not to put you on the spot. Or anything. No, but I was excited to play a woman that was also a sexual creature, because you just don't see women my age in that position. So I was excited.
Quite literally.
Yeah. You yeah. And so I was excited. About that. And she goes through so many changes. And I think all of his characters, even the smaller characters, are interesting people. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, there's just not any.
There's definitely
not a person in it that's not fascinating.
No,
to
there's
me.
a precision to everybody, it felt, in the
Yeah.
thing.
And it felt, the characters were so well created that it almost felt like a TV show, where I felt like this was almost like the pilot, and I wanted to keep learning about these people. Like her journey had just begun,
Right.
And I love that it's cut off, and we really don't know what's going to happen to any of these people, which I think is the hallmark of a great director.
I'm trying to imagine it on network television.
Not network. This would not be on network television.
After American Idol.
No. This would
Different
be
parent
this would
dies
be
every
cable
week.
or or streaming. And tell me what your prep work was like. Was there a lot of rehearsal? How long did you know each other before you started shooting? What was that process like?
God, I can't remember at what point we actually met in the process. It was probably
We
not.
went to dinner. I remember going to dinner in New York. I
Oh,
remember I wore
yeah.
a T-shirt. That's a vague memory.
Cool.
I don't know. I was probably agonizing over what I was going to wear.
Oh,
but
God.
I remember, we went to dinner. I remember that, but
We made out.
that didn't happen. No, but I'm sure I thought you were cute, but that didn't happen. But for me, I will say the process was so much due to Chris and Russ, and I've been saying this. I don't know. This is what I've been talking about recently. Was that Chris is he's very deep and methodical about his way of preparing every scene, the way we would set the scene up. Chris thinks about wants to go through every detail about the character and talk about it and be sure he's in the right place. And he was driving me absolutely crazy. He was driving me nuts because I had come off of this TV show where I'd gotten so comfortable and so used to just okay, let's just try it. Let's give it a shot. And so I had that kind of energy, and I had to let go and just follow Chris and do his thing, and it was magical. It was the best experience I have ever had doing anything. I felt like we had so much money and we didn't have any money, but I felt like I was working on a movie that was supporting me and giving me time. And every scene we set up was like that. And it was the best experience I have ever had, ever. And I'm so spoiled now. I don't know what I'm going to do because I would like to have every person be like you. And I don't know if it'll happen. And it's also, I think it really helped that it annoyed the shit out of me, Because
you knew he was doing his job because you felt challenged.
I used it. I used it. I was like, okay, well, these feelings are really good. These are good feelings. He's playing my son. And
she is agitated with him throughout most of the movie, too.
I do think there's something, I think that's true of this process, that I was definitely in deep on it. And I feel like I had just come from doing a play. So I was used to doing loads of rehearsals and breaking down the scenes and beats by beats and beats and beats. And also a lot of his writing is written really beautifully and structured even though the scenes feel kind of almost meandering, I think there is such a genuine structure that he has.
It's very restrained, which I really appreciate. Yeah.
And requires in-depth analysis, when you're sitting down to the empty set of trying to break down. Like, it's one of those kind of films that feels like it definitely asks more questions than it answers. And I think at the start I had a lot of questions that we never really answered. But the process of it was like Andie. It was one of the best working experiences I've ever had. It was. Wow. It was a gorgeous thing to arrive in the morning, and we had no money really, but we didn't seem to have any. Because when everybody's working for free, time doesn't become such a great restraint in a kind of way.
Well, everyone's there for the right reasons too.
Yeah, that's right.
No one's getting rich
because there's no other reason available. Right. So it never felt rushed, even though we probably did it in 5 weeks or whatever.
I was going to ask, so it was a 5-week shoot?
Yeah, I think so.
And you shot in upstate New York. So.
Yeah, up around Woodstock, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because it felt sort of, we were talking backstage, it felt sort of like an indeterminate location. I kind of thought it might be the South. It was sort of in the fall, and you could see like the seasons, but I liked how there wasn't a sense of place, which I thought worked for it.
Yeah, I think Russ is from Indiana, and I think in his head he kind of saw it as being in and around there. But then we shot in Manhattan a little, and I think somebody drove there at one stage, so we had kind of decided, well, it's definitely going to be in the tri-state area. Right. But we never tried to be too specific about it because it wanted that kind of every town feel, I guess.
It worked. And I mean, the first thing I thought when I watched this was Cassavetes. It felt very much like those incredible movies that he made, 50 years ago. How much of an influence was he directly, was Russell talking about his work, or was it sort of like a loose, hey, this is kind of what I'm going for? How did he communicate that?
I don't know. Like, I know that he gave both of us a list of the films that he felt were going to be big reference points for it. And there was definitely some Cassavetes, but even more so Morris Pilat films, like Lulu. And we watched... Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it was... you can definitely see what he was aiming for when you watch like a film like this and a Morris Pilat film back to back. It's got a similar, again, it's a similar atmosphere.
And is there a particular scene that you felt you were very tested as an actor? It sounded like the whole thing was a challenge, but was there one scene you had a hard time getting through, either because of the emotional content, or maybe you were exhausted, or maybe Chris was driving you nuts and you were over it?
No, it always helped. I mean, the fact that I was having those feelings, it always helped everything just be much more intense and real. I don't remember struggling with any scene. I love the soup scene. I love that scene.
Oh, when we're making the soup.
When we're eating the soup and talking.
Oh, yeah.
The two of you at the table.
Yeah,
that was fun.
That was a good
one. I love that. I love that scene. I think you got on my nerves right before that started too. Just a pinch.
Yeah.
But that was okay.
I mean, probably.
And Chris, your sort of showdown moment with her boyfriend at the table was so hard to watch.
That whole dinner.
That actor was such he was so incredible. I don't know his name,
terrific,
but he was just so real, and it was
Salinger.
really excellent. What was that like? And how much were you improvising at all in that scene?
I think actually we didn't improv a huge amount, but we did in that scene a lot. Oh God, I would call like now that Andie, if we filmed it quite a while ago, so I kind of can't remember the very minutiae of the thing. But now that Andie says it, like yeah, she's right. I used to come with like, with like pages from books, that like my father Matt, who plays my dad in it, he did a quote at some dinner party scene early on. And so I found, or maybe it might have been like Love's Labour Lost or something like that. It may be Shakespearean thing. And so I found like the next scene and then started and learned off the next page of the book or the next soliloquy or whatever it was, and started shouting at him in the middle of the dinner scene. And it would come with stuff that was like, this isn't really improv. It's just me trying to write weird scenes into long scenes. But I think I must have been going through something.
You said your real father's in the movie?
No, you were talking about Gareth, the man that plays.
Oh, I thought you said that your father was actually played your father in the movie. Sorry.
No.
To my knowledge.
It sounded like you said that. Sounded like it said that too. I love the opening scene, which is a lot of improv.
Oh yeah, that was.
That's
that
a
was
beautiful
fun.
scene.
That might have been the first scene that we shot together, maybe.
I can't
remember.
I don't know. I don't think it was, but some of that was written, and then you had asked me about happiness. Remember that?
Oh, that's right.
And that was all improv. So that was, but most everything is written. And the words that have said this before, I loved the words that were given to me because a lot of them were not the way I would speak. And I loved her. I thought I liked the way she was written. I liked the way she spoke. And so it was nice to stick to the script, but it was also fun to have the freedom to improv. And the scenes were always longer. Do you remember that? Like he would have us like start the scenes fluid, like just get into it, and then would pick up the words, right?
Yeah,
At
that's
some
right.
point would pick up the words, and then there was you didn't have to stop. Once you had done the scene, you had the freedom to keep improving if you wanted to. So he would have this beginning and ending that was added on to the scene. Wow. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he could use it if he wanted to.
It's a lot of freedom.
It was a lot of freedom.
It's incredible. In what ways was the final cut of the movie different from what you expected? And one thing I love about the movie is the music. It's so it's like very joyful, but also extremely sad but very buoyant. And I don't know, it's hard to describe it. It feels like the perfect music for this movie. Did you experience a sort of epiphany when you heard the music, or any other facet of the movie when you watched it for the first time?
I mean, initially when I watched it, I was genuinely just so surprised and delighted that Russell had got, I think, exactly the movie that he had aimed to get, because that felt ambitious for a first-time director to be so artistic in the face of people going, come on, what are we doing?
Right.
And I said people, me, you know. But so I was delighted for him for that reason. And you think you're right, and I'm embarrassed now, but I can't remember the name of the guy who scored the movie. But it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and it's a big deal that he can. I wish we could see if somebody would Google it for us. Because I can't remember either. I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Come on.
I feel like his
Somebody
name's
out there
David, but
Google
I
it.
could be making that up.
But yeah, because it's a big wig guy that you can't normally get for some little movie like this, and he gave it a shot and sent it to him, and the guy was like, "Well, I'm too busy right now, but I'll pass it on to somebody." Then he watched the movie and he changed his mind.
Wow.
So it was a big deal. David Shire.
David Shire. That's
Aren't you sweet?
I knew it was
Did
David.
you
I
just
knew it was
remember
David.
it, or did you Google it? Well, I saw the name. Oh, good for you. There you go. Yeah. So it was a big coup, and he wasn't going to do it but then he watched it. So that is.
So no doesn't always mean no when you ask people for things.
Yeah.
Like you can
he watched
keep
it
pushing
and he
a little
loved
bit.
it, and he said, "I'm doing this." That's
very cool.
Yeah. So that was great.
And what did each of you learn about yourself as an actor that surprised you making this movie?
For me, I'm not used to playing still. I play a lot of characters because they're generally quite gregarious, that there's a lot of movement in them. And I felt you have to be quite brave to not do anything, which was at times challenging, but felt quite powerful as you get into it. So yeah, that was something. The strength that you can get from doing nothing at times is probably what I learned as a little skill.
I learned that it doesn't really bother me to see myself naked. It doesn't, like, when I see it on the screen, it had no effect on me. I've seen it so many times. It's just like, yeah, that's what it looks like. But I think it's harder for me in that small space, in that small room with these people. I think that's sort of, like, oh, okay, hey guys, here I am naked. It's to really relax.
But it was so beautifully shot. It was so
it's beautifully shot,
respectful,
and it's and tasteful and important. It's really a huge part of the movie. It's about the human condition and the human body. Your scenes, on the other hand, are really sexy. They're hot. They are
remember what the
so
sex.
hot.
Oh, yeah.
I remember them. I remember them.
We
So
see you
if
naked
you've
with your girlfriend on the
forgotten,
bed.
I
Yeah.
can tell you about them.
Right, yes.
Yes.
In the back of the car.
Yes.
Yeah,
Bum,
well,
bum,
I think
bum, bum,
she did
bum.
all the sexiness.
No, honey, it was her legs and your little bottom, which is quite nice, actually. You have
I
a
appreciate
nice little
that.
tush.
I've been waiting for you for 2 years to talk about my tush.
But,
I knew we came together tonight for a reason. I
yeah,
knew it.
but you know what I think it is? Because I've thought about this. I feel that if I were watching this movie, I've analyzed your character, by the way. So I analyze him that his pain also was anger, which I think happens a lot when someone dies. And so he needed to fuck, excuse my language. But so that's really kind of what he was doing. That was his emotional outlet, whereas my character wanted to be held. And I think you could feel that from her. Like, I think she slept with the first guy because she knew him. She thought it would be comfortable, and it was not comfortable. You can see how uncomfortable she is. And then the next time, I think there is some comfort. There is some comfort. And I think that's what you feel from that character, is the loneliness. And how do you replace that? And so for me, it was, if I look at all of the sex really tells the story. It's really an important part of what this emotional journey is for these people, and how they process a loss and how they process pain.
And what do you think the core message is of this movie? What is the hoped, I guess the intended takeaway by the audience?
Maybe that grief is messy. that losing someone doesn't open itself to a kind of a linear, rational grieving experience. It's more like a collage of emotions that you don't know are even happening until you've just had them. And I think that's probably what everybody's going through in the movie. And with the sex, it's just this kind of being reminded of your own mortality suddenly makes you very horny and angry, which is always the way to go into sex.
That makes sense.
I think there's so much that happens in this movie, and it can be interpreted. I think intelligent movies can be interpreted by every person because they have their own experiences, and they can watch something, and they'll process it in their own way. I think it's that kind of movie. Another element that I really loved in the movie, because I understand it, is the boundaries and the emotional boundaries that my character had, especially with Chris's character, and that's the layering of that. I think is done really, really well. That you see me laying on the couch on him, and in the funeral, I'm physically with him. My lack of that kind of relationship with my other son, you have to stop and think, okay, these people are a little messed up. And I think families are. Mine is. I can tell you that. And I think every family has different complexities. And so it's also about that. It is about loss, but it's also about learning how to get out of each other's way. And I think his character needed to get out of my life, and I needed to get out of his life. That we needed to really fix that boundary that is so inappropriate, emotionally, just all wrong.
There's a perilousness to all that love. I mean, at some point it becomes detrimental.
Right. And I think maybe that was even part of the process. Maybe that was how we dealt with the loss. He didn't have the father, I didn't have my husband. So maybe that element is just another element of the loss. And I love the way it ended. I think James's stand-up scene is brilliant.
So good.
And anybody that was confused, it kind of spells everything out. It ties it up really
It's just
pretty.
a close-up of him the whole time. We never see the crowd. We never see him standing with his mic stand. It's just, it's like a testimonial almost. It's very intimate.
Yeah. And then I also love that the last death brings us together, and you get to see us how we're going to survive, that there is still joy, and that, but it's not sappy and too overdone, it's still an art
But
film.
it really leaves itself open to a sequel.
It does. It really does, I'm telling you. This was the pilot, and I can't wait to see what happens next. So we have some great audience questions. The first one's from AJ. Where's AJ? Oh, hello, AJ. AJ would like to say first, thank you for coming and congratulations. Prior to receiving your big career breaks, what things did you do to stay practiced that others may not have done? Maybe things that propelled you in ways that maybe your peers did not do.
What did we do that our peers didn't do?
I think he's looking for the secret to success.
Are you talking about training and stuff like that? Proactive things that you were and maybe you touched on a little bit, Andie, about training and stuff like that.
For me, it was just to keep working even when you're not getting paid for it. Like, regardless of what it is, if you're reading in on somebody else's thing and doing plays above pubs and keeping your head ticking over, because then you won't give up if you're enjoying it.
I think
Even if
that's
you should,
true.
you won't.
Against your better judgment, right?
I think that's true. I think you just have to work and take chances. I've done a lot of crap. I've done some really bad movies, and even on, not always, but some of them, I learned a lot of really good stuff. And a lot of times I'd be working with great actors. So even if it was just a piece of shit, the process could be very interesting because might be working with some really good people, and we were putting our hearts into it, even though it was never really going to pan out to anything.
I hope you're not talking about Groundhog Day because I will be very sad. Okay.
No. Things you do not know.
Okay.
If you look up on IMDb and you see the titles of some weird things, it's
That's
those.
all no. Okay.
Some of those were actually a lot of fun.
Well, you learned and you got paid, so
Yeah,
It could
exactly.
be worse. It could be worse. The next question is from Marcus. Where's Marcus? Marcus, hello, second row. This is for Chris. He says, also, congrats on your continued success. Do you think you will be exec producing more in the future? And would it be for film, TV, or other? And also, do you think you will be working with Graham, the writer we spoke about last stage, here again in the U.S.? Cheers.
Cheers. Sláinte. I'm hoping to produce something else later in the year. I wrote and produced a TV show in Ireland for British television for 3 years called Moon Boy, which was a really fun show. And we're currently writing, myself and the same co-writer from that are currently writing, what would you call it? I suppose Iraq war comedy. The original Iraq war, the really fun one. So yeah, hopefully in the next year or so, and working with Graham whenever. I mean, I know he's coming and doing the IT Crowd, which is another show I did, I think, for one of the networks here. Oh, thanks. But I don't think I'll do that because I've kind of done it. So I'll let somebody younger and shinier. But hopefully in the future, he's the best comedy writer I've ever met. So yeah.
All right. And last question is from Sarah for Andie. It's a big question, so I'll give you a few moments to mull it over. How do you consistently believe in yourself, personally and professionally? That's a big one, Sarah. That's her. She's right there. You can blame her.
Okay. I'm thinking about it. You know, I grew up in a tiny little town, and I don't know, less than 10,000 people. And my mother was an alcoholic, and I basically took care of her. And I did not have someone helping me out, you know. I managed to get myself to New York City, and then I lived in Paris. I managed to get the first job, and then I lived through that. And, you know, that to me means that somewhere down inside of myself, I have to have some kind of core belief, because I've been kicked around a lot, and I'm still going. And I don't know where it comes from. I cannot tell you exactly where it comes from, but I wish I knew how to sum it up. I guess I just can't be knocked down. I guess that's it, basically.
And all those attempts at knocking you down just make you a better artist. I think we can all agree. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're so glad for both of you. Congratulations. Thank you guys. Have a great night. Thank you.